Hello everyone. Today I will continue reading for you from my book, Breathing for Confidence, which is the first in my series, Your Voice, Your Superpower. So, this is chapter 2, and the heading for chapter 2 is it worth it? Your self-image. Now, in a later book in the series, I will talk more about self-image. But it is incredibly important for performers. And as I go through the series, you'll discover why. I'm sure you already know that. It affects our confidence and the way that we then behave and are able to participate in whatever it is that we do. But as I say, that is for something else. But it is also worth mentioning here, of course. So as with all the chapters, this one has a little quote, and the quote for this one is, "There is only one person with whom you can compete, yourself." And this quote is from me, Angelina Kalahari. Now, of course, lots of people say this, and I hope they do, because it is true. You cannot compete with other people. You cannot. Even if you try, you cannot, because we are all on our own paths, aren't we? I mean, for example, I've worked on both sides of the screen, if you can say it that way, because I've been a theatre director for a long time too, and I've been a performer. So, when you are a director, I can tell you this. If you're listening and you're a singer or an actor, and you go for an audition, the director assumes that you are talented, that you have the skills, that you are able to portray the role that you've come to audition for. All those things are a given, okay? The thing that nobody knows until the director sees it is the fulfillment of their vision for the piece. And that is why sometimes somebody gets chosen over another and you think, well, I'm more talented than that person. It hasn't, at that stage, got that much to do with talent, okay? It's about the vision. Now, I have also been on the other side of it and gone for auditions myself. Thankfully, not very many people seem to have been cast me in things without me having to audition too much. So I don't have that much experience of auditioning, I'll be honest. But I do know how terrifying it can be, especially because I know that they're not necessarily not choosing me because they don't think I'm talented enough. It's because I may not fulfill the things that they need for the role. And so that's for performers. But I think in all walks of life, we compare each other. We compare ourselves to other people. And it is such a bad thing to do because it erodes your confidence completely. And you don't need that, especially not when you're climbing your way up the ladder to where you want to be. You want to diminish that. You want to diminish people diminishing you, and anything else that might destroy your confidence or give it a big knock. You know this. Once you are feeling confident, and we all have those days where you get out of bed and the world is just fabulous and full colour and everything, and your confidence is really high. It feels that you can do anything, doesn't it? And then there are those days where maybe something happened or you're not quite 100% and your confidence is not quite where it needs to be to take you where you want to go, right? I'm sure you've all experienced that. And so that's why it's important to minimize that, especially if you're still aiming to go for where you want to be, then it's really, really important to try and keep your confidence up as much as you can. And of course, optimal breathing helps with that. And voice training is hugely important for that. but we'll get to that as we go through the series. So, Chapter 2. Anne Kelly wasn't always a singing teacher and voice coach. Once, she graced the world's most prestigious opera stages. But when an unfortunate illness robbed her of her singing career, and she could no longer perform, she used her years of experience to teach carefully selected students. Because her reputation preceded her, she was much sought after, and it was almost impossible to get accepted to study with her. Jake knew these things about Anne, and he also knew Anne loved Scott. Because Scott was his best friend and had put forward several good words for him, Jake felt he stood a better chance than most at becoming one of Anne's students. He felt almost confident. Almost. But Jake remembered Scott's warning that Anne would audition him first before deciding to take him on as a student. Jake didn't relish the thought of yet another audition. Not now. He felt so lost, so raw. These thoughts swirled around in his mind as he made his way from the North London tube station, turned left and followed Anne's directions to her home where she taught. He knew today's audition would differ greatly from the one the other day for the TV show. Then he'd had to rush. But now, walking to Anne's house through a beautiful park where birdsong and the wind through the trees were the only sounds, he felt relaxed. Suddenly it dawned on Jake all the running around on that day contributed to why his breathing had been all over the place. The only thing that disturbed his concentration today was his conversation with Martin. His agent had rapped his knuckles good and proper, as Scott would say. How Martin had discovered Jake had auditioned for the singer was beyond him, and so quickly. Someone at the show must have recognized him and told Martin. But who? Jake had learned to notice the signs that people recognized him, and he had seen none on that day. Who knew Jake had violated his contract by auditioning for a TV show without Martin's prior knowledge? He'd have to check his contract, because it didn't sound right. How could Martin have such complete control over his professional life? But Martin's threat to end Jake's wicked contract early because of the violation was no joke. Especially now his confidence was at an all-time low. He couldn't imagine himself doing all the rounds of auditions to secure another role in another West End show. What else could he do? He tried to put the whole horrid episode out of his mind and concentrated on his audition for Anne instead. When she opened the door, Anne's smile was warm and her voice melodious as she showed Jake into a large lounge. Jake was immediately taken with Anne. He knew she had retired from singing opera, and he'd assumed it was because of her age. But the stunning woman who stood in front of him, though certainly not young, was glamorous and filled with vitality. Her dark hair, tied behind her head, continued to give a sense of the opera diva, but her green eyes twinkled with life, and her smile was welcoming. A grand piano stood at the end of the room, and plush sofa and chairs beyond it. Many pictures on the walls showed images from her illustrious career as an opera singer. Jake wondered what it must have felt like to sing with all the well-known singers he saw pictured with her. How does one go from being just an average, ordinary person to singing on the world's stages with such famous singers? Not that Anne was ordinary. Confidence and star quality oozed from her. She was composed and enigmatic as all the experienced artists Jake had met appeared. Just being in her company was inspiring to Jake. Anne led Jake over to the sofa and indicated for him to take a seat. She got right to the point. "Why do you want to study with me, Jake?" Jake felt he could confide in Anne, because she had already achieved her dream and would have had to go through a similar journey than he imagined for himself. And to not do so would defeat the whole purpose of seeking her guidance. So he told her about what had happened during his audition for the TV show. Anne listened but said nothing, allowing Jake to finish his story. As Jake spoke, he remembered what he'd felt like that day. He wanted to get up and pace the room, but forced himself to stay seated. "I've never experienced such overwhelming feelings of panic and the inability to control my body, before or during that audition. But I feel now is the time, while I'm young enough, to decide whether to continue down this path and pursue my dream or let it go." Anne was silent for a few moments. "That's a big decision, Jake. I've seen many artists come to this crossroad. I've been here many times myself. But a quote from Martha Graham, the grandmother of modern dance, resonated with me and helped me whenever I came to this junction. When I first heard it, I immediately recognized it as an unshakable truth, and I want to share it with you. This is what she said. "There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And as there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to decide how good it is, not how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatever at any time. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others." Anne paused. "It's something to remember, yes?" Jake nodded and determined to Google it at the first opportunity. It was worth printing and sticking on his wall. Meanwhile, Anne listened carefully, asking questions for clarification as Jake continued to talk about his audition, the feelings he'd experienced, and his dream of pursuing an international singing career. After a while, Anne asked a question that seemed strange to Jake. "How would you explain what you do to a stranger at a party?" Jake was confused, because Anne already knew the answer. "I'm a singer. I sing tenor roles in musicals, and I hope I entertain people." Jake smiled at his last statement. Anne continued to watch him as she asked her next question. "Who would you say is your competition?" Jake thought about it for a moment, and then named all the tenors that regularly went up against him in auditions for the same roles. "I guess you could say Vince Pollard is the real competition to most tenors. If he turns up to an audition, we may as well all go home." Anne contemplated Jake for a moment. "So, would you say therefore that you are an entertainer and that you have to compete with a lot of other tenors for the same roles?" "Yes, that's about the gist of it." A frown appeared between Anne's eyes. Jake, you told me your dream is to become an international superstar, but you are pursuing and developing a career in musical theatre instead. This way, you will never achieve your dream. Jake sat back. Anne's words stunned him. He'd spent years and large amounts of his parents' money to train to be the best singer and performer he could. Now, one of the best vocal coaches and respected singers in the world was telling him he would never achieve his dream. Are you saying I've wasted my time and my parents' money on a pipe dream? No. I'm saying you need to decide what type of performer you want to be. You need to focus on what you want to achieve. There is a vast difference between being a musical theatre singer and an international superstar. Don't think I'm dismissing or denigrating musical theatre singers. Many of them study with me, and I admire them for their talent, commitment, and the entertainment they bring to masses of people who go to see them on stage. There is also nothing wrong with wanting to learn the correct techniques for singing or speaking, or because you may find it fascinating. Many people wanting voice training have no idea why they want it or what they want to do with it. At least you know what you want. But what I am saying is that to sing at an international level will take work. It won't be easy. It isn't only about your talent, your voice, or your training, but also about how you see yourself in the world. And believe it or not, it all starts with breathing. It has to be authentic. That's why most actors look at breathing first when embodying a new character. You just told me you see yourself as a tenor who sings musical theatre roles, and that your biggest competition is another musical theatre tenor. But you need to see yourself already in the position you want to occupy in the world, in the same way an actor might embody a new character. It should give you the insight that you are your only competition. Can you honestly tell me you see yourself as an international superstar right now? Jake sighed and leant forward, his forearms on his thighs and his head in his hands. He hadn't imagined Anne would put the finger on his problem so quickly. No one had ever directly asked him these questions, and similar thoughts had occupied his mind, especially when he first decided to audition for the singer. Anne was watching him as though she could read his mind. Look, Jake, I'm not saying you shouldn't sing in the West End. It's a worthy career to have, and an important one. But if your heart isn't in it, and you're doing it just for the money, it will show in your performances. It could be a good place for you to practice who you want to become, however. You need to make some decisions that will seem scary and might separate you from your friends. I'll do what I can to help you, providing you pass my audition. But if you do, are you ready to follow my advice? Jake looked up. He couldn't put enough sincerity into his voice. Yes. Then I have a few good practices for you to follow. Apart from being abroad or having a bad cold, you must attend regular lessons, and you must practice the exercises I give you every day. It's the only way to absorb the techniques into your body so they become automatic. Anne got up and ran her hand down her clothes, showing she was ready for action. Right, let's audition you. Jake realized he felt much calmer than he did when he'd arrived. He should have been nervous for the audition. Instead, the talk with Anne had put him at ease. He got up and followed Anne to the grand piano, thinking she would accompany him. But she asked him to place his music on the piano while she left the room. It gave Jake a moment to gather himself. He placed his music on the piano, opened at the pages with which he wanted to audition. Moments later, Anne returned, followed by a younger woman with long blonde hair, whom she introduced as Susie, their accompanist for the audition. Susie sat down at the piano, looked at the music, and asked Jake what tempo he wanted to sing the song. Anne walked back to the sofa meanwhile and sat down. It was clear to Jake that his audition had started. He nodded, and Susie began to play the introduction to the song. But when Jake started to sing, all the paralyzing feelings from his failed audition returned at once. His heart was hammering against his ribs, his hands were dripping with sweat, while more moisture glided down the centre of his spine, and again he was aware that his breathing was nearly suffocating him. In the back of his mind, he knew the high ceilings in the room and the excellent acoustic of the spot he stood in allowed his voice to fly from his mouth better than he should have sounded. At least, there was that to be grateful for. Jake tried to ignore the panic rising in him and threw himself into the audition as though he was performing on stage to a full audience. He wanted Anne to experience what it was like to watch him on stage. She seemed to enjoy it, because a small smile hovered around her mouth. Jake fully expected Anne to stop him after 16 bars, as was usual for auditions of this type, but Anne allowed him to finish the song. As the last notes of the piano hung in the air, Jake stayed in character for a moment longer before letting go and making a small bow to Anne and Susie. The women applauded, and then Susie left the room. Jake was struck by how Susie had accompanied him. Until now, he had never thought about how instrumentalists and accompanists breathe through the music they play, much as singers do. Anne got up and walked towards Jake. "I see we probably have to start at the beginning with breathing. Do you agree?" Jake nodded. "Yes, please. I'm not sure what's gone wrong with my breathing, but I would like to start there." Anne tilted her head, giving the impression that she was dissecting the problem as she spoke. "You're still carrying the energy and trauma of your audition for the singer, Jake. But the breathing exercises I'm about to give you should in time iron even that out." To recap, consider why you want to study voice. If you have ambitions to be a performer, any kind of performer, be it singer, actor or speaker, see yourself in the role before you begin your studies, because it will help you to focus better. Don't compare yourself to others. Your gift is uniquely yours, and no one else can have the same creative expression as you. You are your only competition. Do the exercises you've been given every day. Don't skip them, because you are training your body for stamina. And if you skip your exercises, it will feel as though you have to start again the next time you do them. So, even if you spend only 10 minutes, do them daily and build up to longer periods from there. You'll be amazed at how quickly your breathing and your voice improves. And the bonus tip: if you are already performing or speaking and you're not using a microphone, if possible, try to stand in the best acoustic spot in the room to help your voice sound stronger and clearer to your audience. So I hope you found that exciting and interesting, and you might want to find out more the next time I read for you. If you like these videos, please subscribe, please like them, share them. there are lots of people who might benefit from these readings and from the techniques as we go into the book. Meanwhile, thank you very much for watching and for listening, and I will see you next time.